The current implementation of also service can be switched. I mean, as long as you set the correct, you override the variable correctly. So we might be able to provide the guidance for the project who wants to override. I mean, they make that switch configurable. I mean, my main concern is having the core, the switching mechanism or make the things a little bit too complicated in the simpler service, which it doesn't really heavily depend on the eventlet kind of a thing. I mean, the services are dependent on Eventlet, but they are not leveraging everything about Eventlet. Then this migration can be probably have the less impact. But I understand that for Nova or other complicated services, it might be quite I mean, quite a bit difficult. So does it make sense if we provide the option for the our services? If some like the big bang approach, then they can just do the hard coded override, and the other services which doesn't like the big bang no, the switch, then we can provide the guidance to how to implement that switch, the configure knob, so that you can switch between these services. Then you can also, of course, implement the switching mechanism inside of the services, but it's not It's implemented in the individual services like Novo or Neutron, and not in also service itself.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how else it would work other than that because, um, I mean, whether you take the default is eventlet or the default is um, native, regardless of that, people that are already converted or completely unconverted will have to just arrange for that flag to be set one way or the other.
Yeah.
And for those of the projects that are deeply embedded or deeply integrated into the threading model, I mean, yeah, we can't rely on Oslo to abstract things that
Mhm.
we already aren't using Oslo to abstract, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
if we're reaching into the threading or the eventlet libraries directly, which we are currently, yeah, we're definitely going to have to um, do our own abstractions and synchronize those with whatever
Yeah.
abstraction we're telling Oslo to use. So of course, yes.
So one thing, it's also not all or nothing. So like Nova has a bunch of command line helpers and that kind of stuff that use Eventlet kind of accidentally because they're in the command module, but didn't actually ever rely on any of the Eventlet functionality. So there's some parts of Nova where we can literally just say, these are not monkey patched anymore. We don't need to support two versions of them, partly because they're not in the critical path for performance, but also because they didn't fundamentally need it originally.
Yeah.
There's other parts like the compute agent where we might want to do something like this, where we have the current Nova Compute console script endpoint currently points to eventlet 1. We can add in two more console script endpoints, one that'll point to an eventlet patch 1 and one that'll point to a
Mhm.
non-eventlet patch 1. Over time, we can change the default and remove the two separate backends. Right, so there's a lot of ways you can do this in the packaging fairly easily so that we
Mhm.
can provide both versions. We can provide a way to change the default going forward, and we can test out both in CI. What I
This is
think is going to be really hard is if we like at runtime want to arbitrarily allow anyone to change any pattern over to use either eventlet or not eventlet. That would be a lot harder than us saying, here's our entry points where we have a eventlet patch 1 and not event patch 1. And you
I'm
can, yeah.
yeah, I'm not so sure. I agree that it's much harder to do the other thing. I'm fine. If the switch is Nova Compute and Nova Compute dash legacy are the binaries that you run, then that's fine. I don't really think that's necessary personally, because I think we can provide that switching. Um, like we can replace the Nova command script with something that does no importing at all, checks the environment variable, imports one part of Nova and configures a global, and then jumps to what was the command script before and provide a fully
Sure.
dynamic single binary thing. But either way, regardless of how we like organize those mechanics, what you just described is what I mean by like we Nova have to abstract all of those things. We have to extract all of the places that we call into Eventlet directly and either replace them with generics because they didn't need to be specific, or wrap them in a way that will be able to synchronize with whatever whatever flag we're doing with Oslo, so that we know what mode it's in.
So mechanically, we totally can just have an environment variable, have a single binary. The reason I was suggesting doing it the other way is we don't necessarily want a whole bunch of operators to try disabling monkey patching in the Nova scheduler if we haven't even started to port it to work without it, right? So if we provide these pre-configured versions, we have a way to say, hey, this is a version that we think might work before people actually just try turning off Eventlet.
Yeah, I mean, that's maybe valid. I think that we can still affect that by checking the environment variable in the unconverted services and bailing if you try to set it. The reason I don't like that is that, you know, people are going to build their containers, and like telling them like, oh, okay, we see you've got a bug. We recommend that you roll back to Eventlet mode until we can get it fixed, means that they have to like rebuild their containers. And I think that sucks.
Yeah, but I think this is something we can certainly do at the project level. Like, we don't necessarily need to. We can have some guidance in how to do this, but we don't necessarily need to mandate it's the same for everyone.
Sure.
Would people agree that when we have something that's working at a adequate level of performance and has the same level of functionality, we should prevent people going back to Eventlet? Or do we think we need to keep the escape hatch around? The reason I'm asking is for those command line utilities like Nova Status that doesn't actually need Eventlet, are we okay with just saying they're now not using Eventlet at all?
Sure.
And being done with those moving on?
Of course. Yep. And I also think that we should, I mean, I think it will be obvious, but like we want to get rid of the escape hatch as soon as we feel comfortable doing it. And it would be ideal if that was not more than one release, you know, so. I think Gibby was about this.
Yeah, I think I got enough input that we can move forward from this. For Nova, we will try to keep the compatibility with Eventlet and threading as well via some kind of switch. We will decide how to switch. Based on the examples of other modules doing that, and based on the need we hear from the customers trying to roll this out in a safe way.
Okay.
So I joined late. I don't know if this has already come up, but can I ask a question about the timelines of this on the Oslo side?
So the timeline from the Oslo side is to wait for the migration of services. As I say, we deprecated all the Eventlet support from Oslo, and we have to wait for services to be fully migrated, and then we will be able to drop support of Eventlet on the Oslo site. And Daniel made the presentation about Oslo services. So we are on the way to review his new backend implementation. The patch have been proposed. Go ahead.
So the point I actually wanted to bring up is I think Oslo has jumped the gun in terms of how the deprecation has been done, specifically by declaring that specific modules will be removed in 2026.1. because I think there's going to be we're going to try and move Nova forward. I'm not sure that Nova will be able to run entirely without Eventlet in 2026.1, and declaring that other messaging will no longer support the Eventlet executor in 2026.1 is going to create a whole bunch of deprecation warnings that will show up by people using Nova when there's no alternative for them in that time frame.
And
so we put in a sorry, go ahead.
And upper constraints is going to hamstring everybody from being able to roll forward to new things in Oslo that they might want if we haven't been able to make that conversion in time, right?
Yeah, so my concern is more about the messaging about it. I know we have an intent that we would hopefully be able to stop supporting it, but I think in reality, it's going to need to be pushed to 2027, that one. We can probably revisit that at the next PTG as we're getting closer to that time frame to see how much progress we've made. But just based on how RBAC and other stuff has happened, I don't think we're going to be in a position where Oslo can just remove that support in that release, because it'll either require services like Nova or Neutron that may not have finished the conversion to pin to a lower version, or vendor Oslo. And vendoring Oslo defeats the purpose of Oslo. So I don't know what to do about it right now. I think the deprecation itself was good. I just think adding the will be removed in part in the same time was probably a little bit premature.
Yeah, I understand your point, but that won't be the first time that we announce the deadline. And in all the case, if we have to keep the code in place for remaining services, I don't think it will really hurt. There is plenty of other deprecation that have been remained in the code more than they have been announced. So maybe we can start just by postpone the messaging and the date on the date on the messaging, and yes.
Yeah, I think looking at the current actual progress, I don't think we can really remove anything before 26.1. I mean, the next swap release, because there might be something we also have to duplicate during this cycle or next cycle. Then this cannot be removed from the until the next swap is out. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that we have to adjust the deadline timing, which we already baked into the deprecation warning in the old release. We can probably adjust the velocity as well, but yeah.
Well, you're using deck collector deprecation warning, so
Yeah,
yes.
yes.
You're at debug level anyway. At least by default,
Okay.
they're not printing.
Okay.
It's just it started spamming all of our functional unit tests. And we had no other option, so we just put in a filter, so it's not printing anymore. But
yeah,
anyone who does run on debug level might start seeing those things show up, and that could be concerning for them. So I don't necessarily want to speak for Nova in general, but I am going to. I think we're going to try and aim to have the ability to run in this mixed mode for 2026.1. I just don't know if we'll be able to say only run in that mode in 2026.1. And I strongly suspect we won't be in the case of only running in non-eventless.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. There are a lot of details within which devils may hide.
I suppose just another aside. So I've recently started to be more involved in Watcher as well. This hasn't started in Watcher yet, so moving Watcher away from Eventlet. I am hoping to spend a little bit of time this cycle to just assess how integrated it is and see if we can make some progress as well. I very briefly looked at Cyborg. Cyborg imports Eventlet and monkey patches and then does not use Eventlet anywhere else. So I'm hoping that that's going to be fairly easy to move. But I suspect there's a long trail of somewhat inactive projects that currently use Eventlet either because they just were based off of Nova or use as a service and have it as a transitive dependency. But they will also still need to be moved before the Alza support can go away, or they have to be retired if they're not actually active, right? But Savon, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that a log is just a log, but I'm a bit afraid this is very premature to say, yeah, okay, by 6 months, basically OpenStack won't support Eventlet, and that I'm afraid of the messaging that we create to our operators. I'm very afraid of the messaging that we send. And honestly, I would rather prefer that we discuss first with all the projects and try to exactly know when they could be able to no longer use Eventlet before telling exactly when we are done. I think that operators will know, and I think operators will understand as well. Just about secure back, just about like any cross-project effort that we did, and how long it took. Yeah, I don't know. I will stop here, but I just hear that. I just hope that you hear my concern.
So there is a semi-hard forcing function here. Ubuntu 25.04 will ship Python 3.13. We know there's other issues with Python 3.13, but Eventlet is currently not working on 3.13. 2026, in 2026.2 timeframe, we should be moving our testing release from Ubuntu 24.04 to 26.04. That is going to have a newer Python. We don't know what it is, but it'll probably be 4.14. So the chance of us getting Eventlet working with 4.13 is potentially doable. Keeping it working for 4.14 and forward is going to get increasingly hard considering the investment. So,
are you meaning 3.14?
Yes, 3.14. So I think that's going to force us in the next 12 months that we're going to have to get off of Eventlet. Maybe 18, but whenever we start moving to a base distribution for our testing that has something newer than 3.13 or 3.14 as a Python version, that's going to be very hard if we're still on Eventlet.
I mean, I agree. I imagine that if they choose 3.14, there will still be a 3.12 optional package, right? Which would technically work.
I doubt it.
No?
When they went to 3.12 for 24.4, they didn't have any of the older versions. So they don't typically ship a older Python runtime in the LTS versions.
Okay, when they choose conservatively, they usually have a newer one, right?
So they ship the new ones for all the point releases that come afterwards into the LTS as an on-default version. So when they go to 2604, whatever that ends up being called, they will take whatever the most recent stable Python is at that time.
Well, I mean, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'm not sure what like if we haven't done enough of this conversion to be completely free of Eventlet, and the next LTS is out with a version that physically doesn't work. I mean, maybe that's what you meant by semi-hard forcing function, but I mean, like, it's not like you can.
So that's
I mean,
the situation that Ubuntu have today, right? So go ahead.
Yeah, no. I was saying we had that problem with Python 3. And basically, we just said, okay, please wait because we need to continue to work on that. So, I mean, I understand basically if that Ubuntu version won't support the existing Python version that can continue to use, then for sure we'll be asking people to use the correct Python version. And basically, until we're pretty done with Eventlet, because I mean, forcing people just to magically work because of the next Ubuntu version that we don't know yet. Well, that's a way to say, but
well, I'm just boxing in because it's what's happening right now, right? So 25.04, the release that's happening at the end of this month, it ships Python 3.13, and it was meant to ship 2025.1. Those are incompatible right now. So they're in a position for the first time where they can't ship the latest version of OpenStack in Ubuntu with the default version of Python that Ubuntu is going to ship. And I don't know how they're going to resolve that. Obviously, in the Cloud Archive on their current LTS that uses 3.10, I think, or maybe it's 3.12. I don't remember. They're going to be able to ship it because that's supported by OpenStack. But it will mean that on the point release, they have a currently broken integration. And it's going to be more problematic for more distros going forward. That was kind of just the point I'm making, that like we can't just say we'll just use the old versions of Python forever because it'll eventually stop shipping OpenStack in distros directly.
Sure. I mean, obviously we can't say that. I'm just saying that, you know, if it physically doesn't work, we may not be able to run with the actual version, the mainline supported version, and the distro. I mean, just unfortunately.
Sorry, I didn't want it to realize too much. It's just like, that's why I think there is going to just be a forcing function here that we will have to complete this either in 2026.2 or sometime around then, because we will start having these integration issues, and they already kind of exist.
Do you have other topics? Okay, thanks everyone. So yeah, I agree with you, Sin. I created a sequencing of the migration from the Eventlet point of view about the Python version. And I think it reflects the Python version that we have to support. But yeah, we have to also think of that from the OpenStack side.
All right, I see folks dropping off, so I'm gonna quit recording now, and I'll post this online.